Hi, everybody. This is On coming to you with this month's video. And this month I'm talking about helping others, um, beneficial manipulation or superiority. And this is kind of a big topic. It's interesting because it does have a lot of connection with the codes that we have coming up in August. And I've seen a lot of people going through this kind of experience of these various aspects of wanting to help, not wanting to get help, um, just all kinds of dynamics, not knowing how to help, feeling like every time they do, something doesn't quite flow right, it doesn't quite go right with them. And this is a thing that's actually really big in a lot of spiritual growth. And with everything magnified and everything accelerated right now, I feel like this is a good thing because a lot of people are accelerating their processes, their spiritual processes, their growth processes. And there's always a phase that's part of the growth process, that's part of the natural processes of developing on that so-called spiritual, soulful level, whatever you want to say there, divine connection, that sometimes our ego gets a little out of hand. Sometimes we're trying too hard. Sometimes we're, excited about what we're doing. There's all kinds of things behind it. And I'm going to talk about some of those things in this month's video that lead us there. And yet at the same time, we always have to hold this balance. We always have to hold this aspect of realizing too that sometimes when we're triggered by other people, that is really our trigger. It's not so much that they're doing something that isn't right or good or whatever, but that we are in a raw and maybe sensitive space because of what we're processing, what we're going through, the experiences that we have. Certainly, we can say in an ideal world, we understand things, we can just let them all flow, but that just doesn't always happen the way that we would like them to. And then in addition to that, we also have a component that is connected to um, this aspect of uh, what do I want to say? I mean, we can't please everybody at the same time, so we have to honor that being ourself piece as well. So, just a little note on the background, by the way. This is a photo that I took while I was out and about in Minnesota, along Lake Superior. And so it is an actual photo, but I'm not actually there at the moment filming, obviously, because there's a lot there. And I love these little white flower things that they have. Oops, let me see if I can get over here. White flower things like those right there. When I was walking through them, they were taller than I was in spots. So pretty cool stuff. But let's get back to what we're here to talk about this month. And again, this month, what I'm exploring is helping others. Is it beneficial, manipulation, and or superiority? And sometimes we can have a little bit of each. Some of it may be beneficial, but it may also not be coming across the right way or things like this. Now, in August, when we look at the codes of things, one of the things that we're really encouraged to do is to explore other cultures, to explore other perspectives, look at things from different points of view. And this is really important. I think this is important in this topic in particular, because sometimes we are not looking at it from the other person's side and we jump to a judgment or a conclusion or a belief that we think is correct, and it may or may not be correct in there. And so having to weigh that out and balance it. But unless we're willing to look at things from their side, their perspective, and really know about them. And I sometimes get caught in the middle of this because sometimes somebody will come to me and it'll be like, well, this person or that person. And it's like, well, but I know that person and I know that's not what they're doing, or at least not what they intend to do. And and I'm kind of caught in the middle where I'm looking at things from two different sides, understanding the codes of individuals, understanding the situations, understanding them on a deeper level. And it's very interesting. It's one of the things people have commented about with me is there's a gift for letting people be who they are. And I think that's important because when you really are advancing through, you got to let people be who they are. And sometimes we can deal with that and sometimes we can't. And yeah, I know with the people I work with, if I don't let them be who they are, they're not going to get to where they're trying to get. They've got to have that freedom to just be themselves, and I find the more that people can do that, the faster they move through their processes, the quicker that they can get through things, and I think that's important. It's not just the speed that they get through something with, but the more that they can embrace the process is really it. And the more they embrace the process, then the more they can keep moving um, forward or through something, or whatever phrase that you want to say. I mean, I'm certainly not perfect, so sure there's times that I come off this way to people as well. Where they may feel a certain way. I try not to, but I'm not perfect, and I'm sure there's times that I do, and sometimes that may be because that's what's happening and I don't know it, and then there could be times where that's not what's happening, but somebody might be taking it that way because they don't want to hear what I have to say, or um, they don't understand the experiences I've been through, or things like that. So I think that these things are always important to just kind of keep in the back of our mind as we're going through this and trying to see things. So when we start to look at things from different perspectives, one of the things that we do is we release the deception and the confusion um, that comes with not understanding experiences. So if we're not understanding experiences, there will be a lot of deception and confusion. And this is all part of August codes. Good portion of the month, if we can work from wisdom with people, if we can work through the wisdom and the ways that we're doing things, if those can be rooted in wisdom, we can unfold abundance during this month, which is powerful. We can have peace in handling things. We can getting through what needs to be done, and we can harmonize our differences. And I think, again, this is very, very important with this type of a topic, is looking at how do we harmonize our differences. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we say, hey, I just can't. I can't deal with that. But the key in that part of the process is to own it and realize I can't deal with it because I'm in a place that this is too triggering for me and I have to step away from it. And this is all part of the process. Sometimes we need to face those triggers because they hold huge gifts for us. They always do. And sometimes we need to step away where we're feeling triggered because we have too much going on, too much that needs to be processed, and we have to, catch our breath. We have to breathe into things. We have to bring it around until we are able, willing to look at things from these different perspectives. And the more that we can do that, the more that we find compassion for people. Again, it doesn't mean that just because we have compassion that we put up with all of their BS. I'm not saying that because you shouldn't put up with all of it. But this is a big month. August is a big month for self-care and processes. Some people are going to feel like they're being pushed out of where they don't belong. That's going to probably make some people more sensitive, more triggered, more trying to struggle to find something that makes them feel good or a value or things like that. And this all comes down to embracing greater divine alignment in things. Um, as we kind of go through things, part of our action pieces is looking at the partnerships, the connections, the friendships, the interactions that we're having, and we want to put our emphasis into favorable ones. So we want to be with those people that we have favorable partnerships with. We want to look at where we can create favorable partnerships with people, and yet, at the same time, we need to watch out for who are those people who are using us, using and abusing, because those are not going to be favorable partnerships for us. We may or may not be able to resolve our differences with those people. Um, but the key is really that we take the time to observe it, observe ourselves, observe those triggers, observe what we're not liking, observe where it feels raw to us, and really take a look at ourselves and take a look at things, because this can be a very powerfully transformational time. And I think these interactions will be a key part, whether they are favorable or unfavorable for us, they will be a key part in transformation processes and moving ourselves into new groups of people, to people who do accept us for who we are, and do allow us to be us. And again, there's always going to be good days and bad days. I mean, think of any great friendship that you have. There are times that best friend is going to irritate the heck out of you, and they're going to be annoying as all get out, and you're not going to want to have anything to do with them. And then there's other times that you're going to be like, yeah, it's okay. It's just that person, and they're not doing anything per se wrong. They're just them. They're just them. And you start to learn to work with it. We want to keep a very open mind. We want to learn from the experiences that we're having, and we want to focus on the successes, be happy with the successes that we're making, the completions that are coming up, keep things in a practical aspect, and really focus on our own ideas and plans. So when we start to do this, this is a key thing because um, if we start feeling disappointment when we're doing this, we really want to take a strong look at what we are doing and why we're doing it. Because so many times we convince ourselves that we're going into something to help somebody, to be a benefit to them in some way, to make the world a better place, these sorts of things. And it doesn't matter whether you're a spiritual worker or whether you're just a person trying to live your life, honestly. And and yet we go into these things believing that we're doing it for one thing, but we may really be doing it to get some sort of attention or work through some sort of trauma that we may or may not even be conscious of that was initiated in our childhood. And I do want to mention there's a really great video out there that somebody shared with me over the last month. And that video was excellent in how to really start to identify some of your own patterns and how to really look at how trauma has played out in your life, and healing that in a culture. They call it Healing Trauma in a Toxic Culture with Dr. Gabor Mate. And I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. And this is through the Being Well podcast. You can find it on YouTube. You can do a search. I'm going to try to get the link in, into where you can click on it directly and things like that. But this aspect that it really is so excellent about sharing with us why people become fixers, why people might become a psychologist or a healer or, be drawn to these different things and how that connects with that earlier trauma in their life and how they choose a lot of these spiritual paths of doing things and how that connects um, to their own processes and what they're doing and what they're trying to do in the world, and connected to actually healing themselves in a way. Now, intellectually, a lot of people will probably go, "Well, I already know that intellectually. I already know all about that." Okay, pull that ego in, and I encourage you to take the time to listen to this show. It's about an hour long, and I think it's going to be very, very eye-opening for you, because it really ties in again with some of these components that we have coming up in August that come back to, we don't have to do things for approval. When we're doing things for approval, when we're doing things to fix people, when we're doing things for these variety of reasons, we're not coming fully from the heart. And when we don't fully come from the heart, we deprive ourselves and others of what we can give them in many ways. It comes and ties into knowing that worth and value that you have, that you carry, that you provide, and that God will provide for you as you come fully from the heart, not from the heart like in passion necessarily. Passion's important, but from the heart of more of like an unconditional love, that openness, that uh, compassion aspect in things, and really doing something because it does just blossom and open your heart in this incredible way. It just boom breaks it open, and you get that true sense of fullness in there, which is amazing and incredible. So on this topic that we're looking at, really, when does this helping aspect become too much? And this is kind of an art and it's an ongoing practice thing for us, no matter where we are on our path, no matter how excellent we are. I mean, I'm always kind of gauging and trying to gauge things without judging them. These are some very, very fine lines that we're delving into with all of this. And the art of acceptance and not sounding superior when trying to provide assistance. I'll tell you, if you can get that mastered down, that's gonna be awesome. You're gonna that's gonna be a huge asset to you because so many times, again, we are being in that superior position and we don't see ourselves there. We don't see ourselves in that place. We see ourselves, our intent is to provide assistance to people, to help people, to be a benefit to them, in there. And again, this can happen whether somebody is a spiritual worker or whether they're an individual just interacting with friends and people and family and things like that. And yet we really need to come back in and reel in and say, how can we be ourselves without telling other people what to do? And this is a tough thing, and this is one of the things that people have commented about in the Code Journey work, in my book, The Code Journey. And through that book, one of the things I do is I don't tell people what to do, but I invite them. I invite them to take action. And that invitation, I think, is a really key part of it. And this is hard when you have a certain amount of knowledge and you know things that work. That's great. We want to share those things. And yet at the same time, we want to keep it kind of in that aspect of this has worked for me. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Um, but again, sometimes people don't even need the suggestions in there. And I think that's where some of these really subtle fine lines come up because sometimes people know the things that they need to do. Like people will come to me. I've had some things where I deal with various health issues, and people will come back and they'll be like, have you tried this? Did you know that nutrition can do that? And it's like, I have researched so much of this stuff up and down that I do know a lot of the things. And yet, you know, that's not going to fix everything. As we know, that doesn't fix everything. And they're so busy trying to fix me. Um, and I can appreciate the suggestions and I can appreciate the ideas because maybe somebody's heard of something that I don't know about. Maybe somebody has heard of some things that I'm not familiar with. And yet, a lot of times when people are going through tough times, what they're really needing or wanting is simply prayer and love. They want people to pray that they can find the strength to get through something, that they will just offer up the love to get through something. And this is an important thing to keep in mind when we are trying to help somebody because um, if we get too focused on I've got to help everybody, you need to take this solution, you are this way and this is your type and this is your personality and so you have to do this and you have to do that. Well, that starts to shift over into telling people things. And sometimes we have to just let somebody figure it out themselves. So again, if we come back and offer things to them, I think the offering versus the telling can be a very powerful piece to work with. The questions, have you tried this? Have you tried that? If you're interested in modalities, feel free to reach out to me so people know they have that open door. Maybe there's something I can do to help you. But I come into this thing because here again, this is where some of those fine lines come when people are developing and they're growing and they may not realize that the person they're trying to help may actually already have the knowledge they need or may have already been where they're trying to be and the suggestions that are being made are things that they're already well familiar with. And this is the tough part because even when we connect with people on regular basis. Maybe you go to a meditation group or a spiritual group or something like that, and you connect with people on this regular basis, and you may think that you know them, but you may not know them in there. So I think, if we can keep some of these pieces in mind, it's going to be very, very helpful for us so that we can be that position or offering of help or that assistance without creating some of the negative aspects. And again, sometimes, we need to hear something. And so it comes across rough and it comes across harsh. And, and the timing is just not right for us to hear it. And it doesn't come out, quite right in there. So here again, we want to realize that one thing about helping others or offering up help is that help needs to be chosen from another person. And, it's okay if they're not willing to work through something right now. That's actually okay too. And so they don't have to stop and fix themselves. A lot of people would like it if everybody fixed themselves. I mean, imagine what the world would be like if everybody could fix every issue that they have. But the reality of that's just not a reasonable reality. It's like not everybody's going to like you, and when you're fixed for one person, you're not going to be fixed for another person. And so, here again, these fine lines come in. But this aspect of choice is so important in all dynamics, because what choice does is it invites in divine presence, it invites in God. And so when people are able to choose um, having help versus having a whole bunch of people put help down their throat for things, then it helps them to work through their own stuff. They can work through it as they need to work through it. And that also is important because, as we know, in these spiritual journeys, there is no one method alone that is going to work for everybody all the time. And we need to try different things and do different things and explore different things in that journey and in that process. And people have to work through their own stuff. We can't do the work for them. Yes, we can clear certain energy patterns or we can clear things like that. But if people don't do the work themselves, those energy patterns are going to keep coming back over and over again. And it doesn't completely work. And this is part of what I love in the co-journey work is that it brings us to do the work ourselves in our way as we need to do it as part of our path, as part of our journey. And when we do the work, then it really sticks. When we make the changes, then it really sticks. And that's where we really see some incredible and amazing benefits. So sometimes our beautiful intention to help somebody may actually interfere with their process. It interferes with who they are. It may interfere with them coming to their own solutions and own conclusions. And we certainly don't want to rob that gift from them in things. So, when I had watched this video, a need to help others is a way of overcoming our own trauma. And I think that's something for all of us to keep in mind. I can look at that in my own self, and I know that, my desire for people to know the truth, my desire for people to have a tool or a resource to help them get through hard times is because I've been through a lot of trauma, because I've been through a lot of hard times, because I've dealt with a lot of lies and deceptions and different things in my life. And that doesn't make me a victim. That doesn't put me in a victim mentality, but it's a reality. It's a fact of what I've experienced in this life. Fortunately, I've been very proactive and I've chosen to make the changes and I've chosen to work through that. And on one hand, I would love to be able to prevent other people from having to experience the hardships. On the other hand, I realize there is a power and a beautiful gift in them going through some of the hardships. And there's a very big difference. It's like the difference between going out and creating your own business and developing it from the ground up with nothing and watching it flourish and come into success versus somebody just handing you a business that's already successful. And So I think that's the interesting thing. I think, like in the co-journey work, that's where it comes in, and it's like, here's my wisdom. Let me share my wisdom with you. And yet at the same time, um, you have to find your own wisdom. You have to have your own connections. You have to have your own experiences. And that is a big piece in that. So keeping in mind that a lot of the times the things that we're really driven to do are are connected to situations or pieces that we've felt powerless with in our life or that we've had to overcome, or that are in some way connected to our own trauma. So wanting people to feel loved, wanting people to feel accepted, for example, can certainly be a piece that stems out of my own aspects of not feeling that a good portion of my human life, and my human self not feeling that connection in there. It doesn't mean that people weren't loving me along the way, but there were a lot of people where maybe I was doing something for approval, for acceptance, for um, wanting to be good in somebody's eyes. And so when we're willing to really do this deep work on ourselves, it is powerful and it's beautiful what can unfold from it. People oftentimes, they just want to be loved with an invitation to do something. It's kinda like, "Hey, I love you, and would you like to try this, or would you like to try that?" Or, you know, perhaps you want to do this exploration, and again, making it a choice as opposed to something that we're telling them that they have to do, because as soon as we start going down that road, "Oh, you have to do this, you have to do this is the thing that will work," we then remove that choice, and we also come into an aspect of then resistance, like the people that we're trying to maybe help will go into resistance, and then they don't want to take that in there, even if it's beneficial for them. On the spiritual path, we often get really consumed with becoming so very pure, so very pure, making our space super clean that we end up shutting other people out, and then we can't help them again the way that we would like to help them. So in some ways, when we do that, we isolate ourselves. And this is a mixture, again, a balance, a harmonizing that needs to be found because on one hand, yes, when you're done with something and you've moved through something, you don't want to have all that garbage in your sphere. You want to keep cleaning and keep purifying, and the stuff is not something that you want to be connected to. And yet, on the other hand, when we really keep evolving beyond even that aspect of purification, we are also able to see the beauty and the power and the gift um, in what is not that we have let go of in our life, and not just what we've let go of, but what isn't so pleasant to look at, what isn't so pure, so to say. And this is where you can kind of come in and you could go back to different people or points in time, and even you could, look at Jesus, and Jesus needed his time of purity. He needed to go out in the forest and clear his head and be on his own, but he also sat at the table with people who were drinking and doing other things, and, people that a lot of people considered very impure and very unethical and so on and so forth. So again, we have all of these multiple layers that are going on, and we want to be very careful of shutting people out, because when we get into the shutting people out, what we do is we inhibit our own abundance. We inhibit our own flow in a way because we get into a rejecting mode. So again, these balances, it's always these balances between, okay, here's my boundaries. I don't want this in here because I've dealt with it, moved through it. On the other hand, I can't be in a rejection space of it, and yet on another hand, I don't wanna be the martyr, role of, "I'm just gonna transform everything for everybody," sort of thing too. So, there's, again, blends and balances. There are things I can transform to the collective. How do I transform things for the collective? I transform them from myself. I transform them from myself, and I transform them in my own life. I make the shifts and the changes and the adjustments for me personally, and that does have an impact on the collective. So again, always these balances, not right or wrong. And sometimes we have to delve fully into these different spaces and these different mindsets and these things that we are absolutely certain are right, even if they're not right. We can't see them in those spaces. But then we want to realize that is part of the process too. And sometimes, when we see people going with different things and it's like, this is the cure all thing and that's the cure all thing. And then, sometimes we have to let them just explore that because that is part of their learning process and part of it going. And here again, that's where I've learned I just let people be themselves. They'll get there much faster than if I interfere. They'll get through things better. Um, and there. So in some ways, again, we can kind of isolate ourselves when we try to go down these super pure paths. Sometimes that's needed. Sometimes, but here again, balance it. You've got to balance it with interactions and connections and receiving and these different pieces because you don't want to be totally in that rejection space. Um, the key is how can we accept people where they are at, support them without telling them what to do, and simply just be in observation when they are going through things that we've already gone through. So maybe you're identifying something and you're seeing somebody do something and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I do that. I used to do that. I used to do that. And that, I didn't even see that I was doing that. Everybody kept saying, "Oh, you're being in a victim space, or you're being in this, or you're being in that," and you can't see it. But then, when you reflect back after you get through it, it's like, "Oh yeah, I guess I was in there." And so, if you've truly been through what somebody's been through, then part of what you need to do is to just be in observation and let them go through it, accept that it's part of their process, and just support them without telling them what to do. So, I support you in this process. I can understand that this is challenging. I get this. This is not an easy situation to go through. My love is here. My support is here for you, and certainly I'm holding you in the tension that you will come out victorious from everything and that somewhere this will lead to greater blessings. And oftentimes it does. And again, that puts the power in people's hands to make the choices that they want to make around the situations. It removes the vulnerability and it gives them that option to have somebody to fall back on, in a sense, if they need to reach out to somebody. So that safety to get through it as they need to get through it. And sometimes people do want the help and they do want lots of advice, and that's okay too. Keeping that door open is powerful. So this is all about accepting people where they're at, and I think that is so important when we're trying to help people, when we're in healing modalities, when we're trying to create solutions or so-called fix things in life. I think that's all important. When we fully accomplish things completely, when we have completely overcome them, they will not bother us in a sense. We may not like them, we may not choose to participate in them, but they will no longer be a bother or a trigger for us. And particularly as it comes up through other people who are on other parts of their path. Again, nobody is better than worse than another person. We're at different parts of our path, and many times we loop back around to the same lessons over and over again. So, we might think we've gotten through something completely one way, and then that lesson may come back around on us. So just kind of that's one of the key signs, I think, is when you truly are not bothered by things that come up, whether they're in your own life or others. Obviously you're aware of them, you pay attention to them, you are proactive in the process, and you handle them, but you're actually not bothered, and you can see a lot of, for example, the corruption or what people term as evil in the world, and then you can deal with it. You're actually not bothered by it. Again, you may not like it, you may not support it, but you're not bothered by it, definitely. So even when we do not agree with other people or choose to develop real strong friendships with them, what we want to keep in mind is that We do not need to fix others. We only need to love them through their processes and their challenges and put forth, maybe some reminders for them to keep in the back of their mind while they're going through things. And that is enough. People don't need to be fixed. We hit challenges. That is part of human life. And the key is to let go of trying to fix other people, to let go of having to do it for them and find ways for them to be able to bring it out in themselves. And again, sometimes that is just giving people a little space. That is just offering up love in their process. In there, and I'm one of those people that I'll get people. They're like, "Oh, I'll send you healing energy, or I'll clear your sphere, or this or that," and I'm like, "Nope, don't do it. Please don't do it. Please don't interfere with my energy sphere." Because they really don't know, and a lot of the people that are doing that are not going to improve my sphere. They're not going to make things better for me. And I know that because I've been there and I've been through those shoes and I've, walked those different paths and it doesn't matter how much you evolve your energy, you're still going to have points that you have challenges and you just again need a little love energy. You don't need fixing in there, and that's always important to keep in mind. Those people that appear to be in victim spaces, what's interesting about them is they might have a lot more experience and knowledge, and firsthand experiences and things than we realize. So we may be thinking somebody needs to be fixed, or we may be thinking somebody's in a victim space and they're really not. It may just come across that way to us. That's something to keep in mind as we're looking at things from different perspectives, right? In that aspect, they may simply be sharing things that are happening. That are going on in their life, and certainly we are, none of us are perfect in terminology, so there are times when things get intense and we just may not use the right word. I have that happen. I don't use the right word every single time I open my mouth or speak or do a video or something, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm residing in that space of that one day that I'm having a tough time talking, or using the correct words. So again, being a little bit forgiving in things, and realizing even if somebody is in that space of being a victim, they're not going to get past that space, um, if we are, well, we don't want to enable them to be there. That's one piece. And if we are trying to fix them or tell them things to do or play into it. Again, sometimes this is just like letting somebody vent. They may be very emotional in the moment. It may come across a certain way, but then once they get it out, they come back into balance. So again, we have to know people more and more and more, and look at that and consider that and realize that not everybody that appears to be a certain way is that way. And that's where starting to look at things from other perspectives, getting to know them better, things like that, actually help you to identify those things. Then there are parts in the path where we know a lot, we have a lot of experience, but we can also tend to fall into feeling, acting, presenting ourselves as better than others, more godly or higher than others. And it's kind of like, well, and this I see a lot with people who rely on certifications or rely on certain things. And this comes back to some of those trauma patterns of wanting approval, wanting to be seen as great and incredible, and wanting the work that they're doing to be validated in some way, or what they're doing to be validated in some way. And the aspect of this is that, um, this oftentimes comes from not feeling good enough, patterns that have been set up early in life of not feeling good enough, not being acknowledged in our youth. Um, and, just even if we do have a lot of wisdom, that doesn't make us better than others. It doesn't make us better. It may mean that you are living a chemical-free life. It may mean that you are eating healthy. It may mean these different things, but it doesn't make us better or worse. Our society is built in a way to make us believe that one thing is better than another thing, and this is done to be able to control people. You've got to do this to be considered successful. You've got to do that. You've got to meet the standard. You've got to have this credential, whatever it is. You've got to have this status level. And yet, a lot of those things don't make any difference because the status and the titles are just given out anyways these days, and they're not really per se meaningful. And if we can get away from some of that and come back around to, yeah, it's not about being better or worse. In my environment, this is the way I choose to do things. This is the way I want my environment to be. And if somebody's going to enter that environment, then, you know, I require certain things for them to be a part of that environment. They don't have to be that way. They can go create their own environment. It's no different than houses. One person is going to keep their house neat and clean, and another person's going to keep it messy. And it doesn't mean that the messy person is worse than the clean person. It just means that they're messy, and with messiness comes certain consequences, and with neatness comes certain consequences. And the neatness may not be better if it's all stemming from OCD aspects. So there's really, again, we've got to be careful of these aspects. And should we have to be afraid of everything that we say and we do? No, we shouldn't. But we do want to be conscious. Are we coming across saying, well, I'm better than this? Well, I'm pure than, I'm this, and going down that I don't allow any of that. I don't allow any of that, when we start to go down some of these paths, it does come across as being superior to other people. And this again triggers a lot of different things. So reconsidering that, if that other person represents your wounded child in a sense, and your child wanted to be more superior, more recognized, more acknowledged, would you really be trying to be superior over them? No, because you would be building them up in a sense, so that reflection of the inner child is also getting that strength built up in them. So again, it's so many fine lines in here, and I don't want anybody to get OCD. I just want you to think about there being a little bit more to things than what you may be seeing. On the other hand, if we start confronting those people that are doing the superiority thing, that are in that space of feeling superior or acting superior, or these types of better than aspects, once we start to try to open that door up, and confront them or bring it to their attention, we can also be reopening wounds, inflicting pain, reinforcing the not good enough or unapproved of patterns. And this is a very, very tricky spot, because a lot of people who are in that space are in a space of insecurity, so they will get very reactive if they are confronted about those patterns in things. And so it is a very, very touchy line. And we have to realize that if we are going to bring something up to, and I'm not saying stay silent necessarily, but you have to know when it's okay to do it and when it's not okay to do it. You have to find that flow to realize when they may or may not be more triggered. And if they're in that space of coming off in a superior mindset, or in that kind of a presentation, that may not be the time to do the confrontation. You may want to wait until they're in a little different space that will be more receptive, because the more somebody is standing in a superiority space, the more they will reject what is being said to them in there. So very subtle rephrasing of things can make a huge difference, right? Um, very aspects of the subtle rephrasing of things can shift the perception. So um, you know if somebody's coming across and they're saying, I've got everything that's happening to me is worse than what happens to everybody else, and nobody has it as bad as me, right? That could be some heavy victim energy in there, and that could also be superiority energy in there. And the reality of it is that's not actually a true statement, because there are always people who have it better and who have it worse than us, right? So then that puts us into false statements and reduces the trust that people have in us, because when we do that, it's kind of like that crying wolf thing. And people feel like it's an exaggeration. It doesn't feel authentic. And in that process, are we really being authentic? No, because we are standing in a lie. And so when we speak that, we're not. And sometimes we bring the drama factor out a little bit more, because otherwise we won't be listened to. That's a learned pattern as well. So, again, these combinations. And if we start to look at this, and we can say, well, okay, let's look at this. Yes, you've had an incredibly rough week, or you've had a lot of big challenges to face. But, certainly there are people out there who have been worse, are worse, struggling with bigger things. Um, and realizing that if we're not addressing these false statements that we're making from ourselves, then we invite in a victim energy, and then we can fall into that victim energy pattern. So instead, we may want to think of things, presenting things a bit more factually, followed by our feelings. So ABC and D happened in this week or this last month. This brought up these thoughts and emotions and feelings of whatever they were, anger, frustration, whatever it is, and that triggered this response in me. And here's what I have done, what I'm doing, what I'm working through, etc. So once we change it to this kind of a phrasing and things, now we've got something that we can work with, because now we're speaking truth. So we're open to hearing solutions. We're open to creating solutions. We are no longer in an inauthentic or exaggerated aspect of ourselves, but we have come into authenticity. And we have removed the victim piece, because we have acknowledged, yes, indeed, these things did happen. Yes, they were challenging. Yes, this is what happened to me. Yes, these are the thoughts and the feelings that came up. And no, maybe I didn't handle things the best way, but here's what I've done. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm working through. And recognizing, indeed, I have the ability and the power to work through it, and to succeed, and to come out of this, and to shift this energy. So I think that's kind of a lot for this week. I think I've gone on a lot longer than I normally would. But there's a lot to say in this, and there's a lot of layers in this. And boy, I could delve on and on and on and on and on into all of these different layers. And I don't want to go that far down the rabbit holes at this time. But I hope this gives you some pieces to consider. I hope this gives you some things to think about, because there's always multiple sides to things, and it is important, especially if we feel triggered, to take a look at these things and to understand the connecting components in it, to look at it from other people's point of view, and to recognize there may be a lot that we don't see, and we're perceiving something that may or may not be true, depending, again, where we are, what we're feeling, what we're experiencing in our life. And this is simply a call to just say, let's try to pay attention a little bit more. Let's try to be a little more conscious. Again, not in that OCD, walking on eggshells kind of way, but in that way of recognizing, okay, where did I step into this pattern? Where did I invite in a victim energy? Where did I do this? And what am I doing to change it? Stepping into that energy pattern, saying, this is what I'm seeing in this person, but what if they're not really that way? What if it just is coming across that way, but they're not actually that way, in there? And allowing, again, the authenticity, letting ourselves and letting others be authentic and who we are, even if that feels a little dramatic, even if that feels a little hard to deal with at times. Because, again, knowing that the more we can allow them to just move through it, the sooner they will move through it, the better they will move through it in a way, the more they will be able to shift things in there. And that's all comes back to that component of creating a space of safety. So take care, everybody. I hope you have an incredible month in August. I'm very excited because my personal year codes are showing very favorable in August, and I've had some really bumpy pieces along the way the last couple of months on the road here. So I'm very excited to have some incredible, beautiful energy to work with and to have that coming through and coming in. And hopefully, I will actually be out in nature next month. I know I said that last month, but hopefully, I will actually be there in nature. And it's just the humor of my life right now that I am back to putting these screens up. But hey, at least you get some beautiful scenery to look at. So with that, take care, and I will see you next month.